give more information about MetroCon of this year. The session 1 is our legal sessions, which will be hosted by the Digger Chen. The section 2 is the Eco Investment Forum, part 1. Section 3 is Technologies is Changing the Future. Section 4, Gold Eagle Investment Forum, part 2. Section 5, Health Care. Section 6, Flying House Talking. Section 7, Youth Education. Section 8, Wealth Management. Section 9, Corporate Development and Strategy. Closing ceremony and award ceremony will be have the keynote speeches come from the Tiffany Xu and David Liu from the AT&T Labs. 欢迎大家来到2020年城市论坛。今年的城市论坛呢，我们将有2个 keynote sessions 和9个分会场。第一分会场是法律专场，它包括移民法、海外投资法，以及一些简单专利。第二部分是精英投资论坛，将主要分享地产投资。第3分会场是科技分会场，将着重于科技改变我们未来的生活。我们这次请到了德州仪器的吕小玲首席科学家，来自德州仪器。刘健总监来自于 AMS AG Company。Sam Chen 将告诉你机器人如何改变我们的城市。第4分会场是精英投资论坛第2部分，我们请到了 Kevin Chen 教授，将着重预测2021年的行情走势。第5分会场是医疗健康，我们请到了赵玉博士、Tracy 徐博士，还有唐薇博士，他们将会告诉大家在 COVID-19 是如何诊断及预防，以及目前疫苗的最新进展。第6部分是飞马逃课，我们请到了2位专利律师，他们将告诉大家如何赢得在你的创业过程当中，如何通过专利来赢得你的市场和未来。第7分会场是青少年教育分会场，我们请到了来自 UTD 的 Warren Park 教授，还有来自于 Toyota 的 Sarah Doran 以及 David Chang， 他们将会为大家分享青少年教育及机器人等专题。第8分会场是财富管理，我们请到了 Tiffany 徐、Angela 林晨、Evan Khan， 他们会给大家在财富管理上面做出更好的规划。第9分会场是全体分会场，我们请到了王建生博士和 Grace Du 以及蒙空痛创业的历程。最后一天晚上7点钟开始，我们有颁奖典礼和闭幕式。在颁奖典礼和闭幕式上，我们还请到了 Tiffany 徐，他是我们这次冠名赞助商的互惠财富集团的创始人及 CEO。此外，我们还请到了 David Liu， 他是来自于贝尔实验室，目前是副总裁。谢谢大家。
good afternoon, distinguished guests, sponsors, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2020 ACP MetroCon. We would like to introduce this year's theme, United and Built Strong Communities. Claire and I will be your hosts for this afternoon.
各位嘉宾朋友、女士们、先生们，大家中午好！在各位领导和各商贸企业的大力支持下，在论坛组委会的积极筹备下，第4届达拉斯美中专业人士协会城市论坛今天在这里隆重开幕。本次大会的主题呢是团结一致，健全社区。我谨代表协会向在线观看我们论坛的各位领导、嘉宾、企业家和各界朋友表示热烈的欢迎。我是今天的主持人 Clara。
Our ACP President Chiang Gan will now kick off today's event with his opening remarks. Let us welcome 2020 ACP President Chiang Gan.
首先呢，我们有请2020 ACP 会长干强致开幕词。
Thank you, Clara and Benny. My name is Chiang Gan, the president of ACP Foundation. On behalf of the ACP Foundation, it is my honor and privilege to welcome all participants into our 4th ACP MetroCon. Founded in 1993, ACP Foundation is a non-profit 501c3 organization registered in the state of Texas. With more than 1,400 active members in the past 27 years, we are making a strong impact and have gained great reputations for leadership and professional services in the local communities. The ACP MetroCon is one of the largest conventions in the DFW area, hosted by the ACP Foundation. ACP sets a mission to serve local communities in science, technologies, educations, innovations, entrepreneurship, and community services investment. Starting the first MetroCon in 2017, every year, the ACP MetroCon has attracted more than 1,000 participants in November. This year, we host the 4th ACP MetroCon, featured 2 keynote sessions, 9 symposium sessions before Thanksgiving. The theme of the conference in 2020 is Unite and Build Strong Communities. 2020 has been heavily defined by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to global social and economic disruption, mass cancellation, and postponement of other events. Worldwide lockdowns and the largest economic recession since the Great Depression in last century. 2022 ACP is also a special year. I just want to give you a few numbers to introduce what we have done during the COVID-19 pandemic. ACP and other communities organizations started fundraising over $300,000 in a short time, and we purchased over 10 million PPEs, delivered over 100 hospitals, clinics, fire stations, and police departments in the DFW area. Over 350 volunteers participate almost 5 months fighting activities. We also host a series of healthcare seminars, tell people wearing masks can prevent coronavirus spreading. I believe all this protection makes the low infection rate in our Chinese community. I want to show my gratitude to our sponsor and donors. With their helps and generous donations and support, ACP can fulfill their events and the program successfully. This year, we special thanks our title sponsors, Sky Vision Holdings. In 2020, many ACP programs was transformed to online events. Here of the ACP programs in 2020, and I think many people attend at least one of them this year. Many of these programs have been hosted by ACP for many years. And also, I want to borrow this opportunity to introduce ACP team leaders. They contribute their time and talent funded above programs and benefit our communities. I also want to say thanks to the ACP teams and advisory board members. I want to introduce 2020 ACP MetroCon chairwoman Liu. She takes on the burden of this conference and will give more information about MetroCon of this year.
Thank you, Chang, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Liu. I'm honored to be this year's chairwoman and have this opportunity to introduce the ACP MetroCon 2020 events. As everyone is aware, this year is completely different, and it has certainly shaped by the ongoing pandemic that has raised not only our country, but the entire earth. We hope that you and your families are doing well. And for those unfortunate families who have faced the current event with a loss, our hearts and deepest condolences go out to you all. Unlike each year, where we can gather at a luxury venue and rub elbows with our city in needs, this year's events are taking the CDC advice and doing our part by going virtual to combat COVID-19. Without further ado, it is with great respect that I began to elaborate this year's virtual events and honor guests. The ACP MetroCon 2020 events will be hosted from November 15th through the 21st. Please note the dates and times on the program to avoid missing any of the sessions, ceremonies, honor speaks, and delightful performances. The sessions will include legal, investments, technology, healthcare, flying horses talk, education and youth robotics, community services, corporate development and strategy. Today, we are honored to invite 3 distinguished guests who independently have tremendous achievements in the fields of academics, community service, entertainment, and legal defense. They are Hattie Tabor, Director of Science in Business, Analytics Program at SMU Cox. Lisa Young, the President of Communication USA Group. Peter Zandenberg, Attorney at law, partner at Iron Fox LLP. I can't wait to see what topics are in store for us today as we take part in history in the making from all our guests. Thank you for being here today. We hope to reach thousands of viewers with our virtual sessions.
好的，谢谢会长以及大会主席刘立瑶的精彩致辞。我想大家可能对他们的介绍也是有一定的了解，那他们也为我们准备了一个精彩的短片，我们一起来看一下。这个镜头。虽然是不同寻常的一年，但是呢，我们还是以这样的方式在这里举办我们1年1度的城市论坛。还记得第1届城市论坛呢，是在2017年，孟瑜作为当年的会长创建了这样一个盛大的盛会，每年1次。转眼的时间，今年已经是第4个年头了，他也是一直带领着我们，鼓励着我们，一直到今天。 那接下来呢，就有请 ACP 2017年的会长孟云博士来介绍支持本次论坛的各个城市。
Now let's welcome Dr. Meng to introduce our supporting cities.
Good afternoon, everyone. So ACP MetroCon is a grand conference for the Chinese community in Dallas area. It covers a comprehensive variety of topics that people care. It takes a week to discuss this year. That's wonderful. Everyone can be a listener, a participant, or a contributor. This fantastic platform is supported by many cities. This year, we have received proclamations from mayors of 9 cities of Dallas area. They spoke highly of the ACP's distinguished services to the community and its effort for a prosperous Chinese community through educational activities and charitable initiatives, such as its responses to the coronavirus pandemic. The 9 mayors proclaimed November 21st as ACP Day of the cities. These mayors are Jeff Cheney, City of Frisco; George Fuller, City of McKinney; Jeff Williams, City of Arlington; Joe Chow, City of Addison; Robert Dye, City of Farmers Branch; Kevin Falconer, City of Carrollton; Harry Lazolier, City of Plano; Debbie Stout, City of Allen; and Paul Volka, City of Richardson. We also received a congratulatory letter from Chinese Students and Scholars Alliance of Texas. Well, a wonderful week is waiting for us. Let's enjoy these beautiful days and use it to think about our past and look forward to our future. Thank you.
感谢孟云博士，也再一次感谢这些周边城市对我们本次论坛的大力支持。那当然，我们的论坛也是离不开各商贸企业和各界朋友的大力支持。在此，我们特别要感谢所有的赞助商。
Now, Claire and I will take turns introducing our sponsors.
首先呢，我们来感谢冠名赞助商互惠财富集团 Sky Vision Holding、Texas Instruments 德州仪器、The Science Trade Inc. Dr. Jason Wang、AYSI and Cathy Bank.
Discovery Montessori Academy, Beyond Soft Consulting, RFP Technology Inc., BB&T Mei Miao, Jet Li.
Pacific Century Development, AlphaGo, 陈鹏先生和徐雷女士 James Realty, 方静慧女士 Dr. Ke Liao, HMY Investment LLC, Maria Wei.
Comerica Bank, Helen Lee, Dr. Jinsong Zhang, Beast Bros Insurance and Financial, Li Yao Castillo, O Media, Clara Lee, CC Hampton CCIM, Jenny Ma, CPA. Now we will introduce our keynote speakers. This year, we'll be having a total of 3 speakers. First off, Lisa Yang, President of Communications USA Group. Then Hedy Tabor, Master of Science and Business Analytics at SMU. Then Peter Zendenberg, partner of Arndt Fox LLP. First, let us welcome David Yan to introduce our first speaker.
接下来呢，就进入到我们最精彩的环节，就是我们今天的主题演讲环节了。首先有请2018-19 ACP 会长 David Yan 来介绍今天的第一位主题演讲嘉宾。
Good afternoon. My name is David Yan, former president of ACP Foundations. I'm so honored today to introduce our first keynote speaker, Lisa Yang. Lisa Yang is the president of Communication USA Group. She was a producer and a host for the TV and radio programs. She spearheaded and organized several international cultural exchange programs. Currently, Lisa is the ambassador for the American Red Cross and also ambassador for the Clinton Foundation. Lisa was recognized for the President Clinton and Vice President Gore as honorary California citizen. She was the first person to organize the China film exhibition that has showcased 23 Chinese films, which had never been seen before in the mainstream theaters. She has written and directed 3 public safety announcement films, which was broadcast in the different ethnic TV channels. Born in China and raised in Taiwan, Lisa was graduated from a National Taiwan University of Arts. In 2014, Lisa received a UC Berkeley School of Public Health Senior Leadership Award. In 2015, she received Congressional Woman of Distinguished Award. In 2019, she was selected to have a Chinese post made commemorating her contribution. Let's welcome Lisa Yang to give us excellent speech today.
David, thank you for your kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor and a privilege to be here, and thank you to the ACP Foundation for inviting me to speak to you today, and thank you for letting me share my story with you. I was born in Xi'an, China, in the Shanxi province. I grew up in Taiwan and the immigrant to the United States in May of 1969. Exactly 100 years after the Transcontinental Railroad was completed. At that time, I did not yet know much about this very important chapter in American history and all the sacrifice, sweat, and the blood that was shed by the Chinese railroad workers. When Chinese President Jiang Zemin visited the US in 1997, I met a reporter from the Asian Journal newspaper who invited me to attend a meeting with the Los Angeles Lodge of the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, also known as the CACA. CACA was founded in 1895 and is the oldest civil rights nonprofit organization in the United States. When I heard their mission statement, 2 words jumped out at me: empowerment and justice. These words resonate with me because those ideals are so relevant for the Chinese community. I joined this organization immediately, and together we found the Greater San Gabriel Valley Lodge a few years later in 2000. We focused on recruiting members like myself, where English is their second language. Here's the logo of Chinese American Citizens Alliance. And next slide. This was the year of the 2000 when we chartered the Greater San Gabriel Valley Lodge in Monterey Park. The person who stands on my right, Hilda Solis, is the former Secretary of Labor Department. And the gentleman on my left behind me is John Chen. He's the former treasurer of the California state. And the picture on the left the one wearing the purple dress is Judy Chu, currently is the Congresswoman. At that time, year of 2000, she's the Assembly for California State. So in 2009, when our greatest San Gabriel Valley Lodge was 9 years old, we worked to bring our CACA community together by sponsoring a national biannual conference in Los Angeles. A total of 17 lodges nationwide came to attend. When members of a community who share similar values and goals come together, great things can happen. We discussed several topics related to our communities at the local and the state level, as well as the unfair treatment and the tragedy our Chinese ancestors have encountered. The topic of the Chinese Exclusion Act was brought up. The Chinese Exclusion Act was the first and the only federal law in US history thus far that excluded a single group of people from immigration on no other basis than race. We felt it was important for our community to raise awareness and request an apology for this unjust act. All our members rally around this cause. We decided to work together to submit a resolution regarding request to the federal government to ask for an apology for the Chinese Exclusion Act. After drafting and submitting the resolution to the National Grand Lodge, all the lodge representatives approved. I remember this time vividly because there is nothing like the thrill of working together with other like-minded people to make a history. It took over 2 years to get the bill passed. During the first time, many Asian community members and organizations demonstrated their community mindset by jointly working together as a team, volunteering and dedicating their time to support the cause. Groups such as CACA, Committee 100, Japanese American Citizens League, National Coalition of Chinese American, and the Overseas Chinese American. And the leaders like a Congresswoman Judy Chu and California Senator Dianne Feinstein all share their support to the resolution. The final version of the bill changed the word apology to regret, but that allowed it to get passed unanimously through both the Senate and the Congress in 2012. Building on the success of the bill passage, we continue our efforts to raise awareness. In 2014, the plaque of Chinese railroad workers was placed in the Hall of Honor at the Labor Department in Washington, D.C. Here is the picture of it. The gentleman standing next to me on my left is the former Deputy Secretary of Labor, Chris Lu. And the others is our CACA members. So by having community mindset, or forgot to mention, we're standing in front of the plaque. Where my hand is a point, the Chinese railroad workers. Hope you can see that. By having a community mindset and through focused community effort, we raise awareness of the injustice of the Chinese Exclusion Act. We wanted to succeed in bringing more justice to our world. Now, I'm working on producing a movie about the experience of the Chinese railroad workers called The Year of the Iron Horse. The screenplay is written by Oscar and Emmy Award winner Barry Morrow, who won Best Original Screenplay for Rain Man. Our hope is to bring this chapter of history to life and to provide a voice for the voiceless. Here's the picture of our screenplay. Barry Morrow. I took this picture when he came to Los Angeles. He was holding the Oscar, which he won for the Rain Man. Making progress in this world requires having a community mindset first and foremost. But to create that community, we must focus our energy on finding things that bring people together. How can we cooperate and collaborate with each other? How can we develop a community that strengthens our value and the culture? This is one of the picture, our movie, so The Year of the Iron Horse movie. This is one of the from our photos. Now, today, you are members of the ACP and the experts in the field of science, technology, education, innovation, and entrepreneurship, community service, and investment. I firmly believe that as a community, we can approach the great problems that remains. The world community is looking for your leadership. Now, I ask you to imagine, if you want to create a more harmonious world, what else might be possible with a community mindset? Thank you very much.
再一次感谢 Lisa 对我们的分享，也感谢您对我们这个社区做出巨大的贡献，谢谢您。那接下来呢，让我们有请卢卫平来介绍今天的第2位主题演讲嘉宾。
Now let's welcome Wei-Ping Liu to introduce our second speaker.
Hello everyone, my name is Wei-Ping Liu, and right now is the VP of the ACP Foundation. I'm very honored to introduce Haley Tabor as our keynote speaker. Haley is a very famous senior executive in the SAP BI consulting world. She works with Accenture for 26 years as a SAP BI global leader. And there's something in the consulting world. If you talk about SAP BI, you probably know Haiti Tabor. She's that famous. And I was honored to have opportunity to work with Haiti under her leadership. And 7 years ago, Haiti joined SMU and started a Master's of Business Analytics and SMU. I was actually surprised. I was, wow, Haiti is from the industry to the education world. And how did she do? And actually, she's doing so well. And I know many students, including Chinese students, graduated and get a very good job offer. And it was, wow, Haiti is very successful in combining education and the industry. Thanks, Haiti, for that. And also, Haiti is not only a leader, but she's a very a good friend. I still remember when I worked with project and after work, we go eating and we go chatting and talking. And she's, I think it's starting the playing the piano at that time. I don't know if Haiti is still playing that or not, but I was playing some Chinese instruments. Maybe hopefully someday we can play together. Well, thank you. I'll give the time to Haiti. Please welcome Haiti. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Wei Ping. It's very nice to see you again and actually to spend some time with you. And I want to thank the ACP Foundation for asking me to speak today. I love the idea of trying to unite and build our stronger communities. That's a big part of what we do at SMU, and it's a big part of what I've done in my program. As Wei Ping mentioned, when I built this program, it was really focused on teaching people, the next generation of students, a little bit about analytics and how to do this in our world, because that's a big part of our world right now. It is a STEM program, and we do have a number of students that come to our program that are international students. And in any given year, about 50% of my students are international students. So I've gotten to know them all quite well, which is lovely, and it's just been a big part of my life. As he mentioned, I did work for Accenture for a really long time. I loved working there, but doing consulting for 26 years is a lot of years. And I switched over to SMU. I actually sat on their board, helped them build this program, and then they asked me to direct it when we got approval for it. So this is a Master's of Science in Business Analytics. I'll talk about it a little bit today, but as I talk through this, really what I'm talking about is getting involved in your community from a university perspective. And it doesn't have to be with SMU, although we would love to have you involved at SMU. This could be any of the universities that are local to your area or that you're interested in getting involved with. That's how I did it, because I sat on their board. They knew I wanted to teach. I love teaching students. It's a big part of what I want. This is my retirement career. So this is just fun for me, and it's a big part of my life. Also you can see on my screen that I have a few little fur babies, my babies that I keep at home. Also my students affectionately refer to me as Mama Hetty when they come to school here. So that's been a big part of my life, is to have my students in my life. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was just really understanding from a business perspective what's going on in the world, and our tools and technologies, especially in areas like analytics or any of the STEM related fields, have changed constantly. And one of the best ways to understand this and to work with people in this new changing world is to be up to date on new tools and technologies and advanced training that is available to you. So for any of you interested in going back to school, that's a great thing. These universities have a lot of the new tools and technologies available for you. But also, if you're just hiring people from those universities, realize that they're looking at the latest and greatest in these tools and technologies, and that's a great place to start and get involved in your community. One of the things I wanted to mention is I focus specifically on analytics, and that's an ever popular and ever growing area right now. And when you look at analytics and what's happened in analytics over the years, you're going to see with the companies that work out there, especially those that are in the chief data officer positions, that there's a lot of change happening on a daily basis. It's a very big cultural change for companies. A lot of the companies do not have good data literacy. They don't know how to use the data that they have, although they might be capturing it now. and they may not have the relevant staff or skills to be able to work with the data that they do have. And that's where universities tend to come into play. And you can see some of the obstacles companies have to success. And so maybe for some of your companies, you might have seen some of these where they may not have always the right people or right employees, and maybe need some new fresh blood in there. You may not have the right technologies available to you, or you might not be thinking far enough ahead from a strategy and a vision perspective. And Lisa mentioned people in the STEM field, right? This is the STEM area is just a big part of what we focus on in the universities, is to make sure that people's technologies are up to speed. So we want to make sure you can adopt the right tools and technologies, and you have the right support to be able to do this. So how do you work with universities? Well, that's really pretty easy to do, right? When I got involved with them, I knew that Accenture had a seat on the IT board at SMU, and it's something I wanted to do because from a future perspective, I wanted to teach. So I just went and talked to them and said, let me sit on your board and I'll help you figure out analytics, because that's my area of specialty. And fortunately, they were thinking far enough ahead to know that they wanted to do that. So for you, it would be wonderful to have you involved in the universities that are local to you, because you bring so much to our students, and I'm hoping that our students can bring so much to you. So for companies, this is a great way to locate some exceptional talent and get them ahead of time, right, as they're coming out of school. You can reduce spend on new products or projects that you have going on, or actually get some help on some of those projects. And I'll talk about some ways that we can do that. You can try out some new tools and technologies, because these guys are learning these new tools and technologies and are willing to work with you on what they are and helping you understand those. Maybe you want to do some research, and our professors are terrific at research, and they want to be a part of different companies to help you with research and looking at kind of next generation of things. You may have some projects on your to-do list, right? Maybe that you don't have time to do. And this is a great area for us to get involved as well, and for universities to work with you. And then, as you know, our next generation is coming up with millennials and Gen Zs. And a lot of you, if you're like me, maybe you're a little bit older and quite don't know how to work with some of these new generation of students. And this is a great way to understand how their mind works, because it's a little different than someone like myself who's very tenured in the industry, and seeing what shapes these individuals, what drives them. And that's a big part of what you should be incorporating in your businesses. For the students, they want to make a difference. So this is the biggest thing I hear from the students that I have who are younger. Our average age this year is about 27 for my program. They want to be involved in the company, and they want to be involved up front. So that's something you should know about these students that get involved. They do embrace change, right? This has been probably the most disruptive year I've seen in my lifetime, with all of the things that are going on right now, and especially, at this point in time. And our students understand that, and I'm surprised at how resilient they are. And how much they're working through things like COVID-19, or things like a presidential change in the United States. All of these types of things have made a big difference to these students. And I mentioned a lot of our students are international students, and this has been especially trying for them coming into the US and trying to get an education and get jobs here in the US when it's been a little bit of a troubling time here. So they've been really strong in embracing change and being a part of this new world. These guys also bring fresh eyes to the company, right? So if you hire them, or if you work with them on projects, what you'll see is they think differently than you do and I do. They think with a very new mindset, a very young generation of mindset. And that's a really great thing to bring into the company, to see things a little bit differently than maybe the way you've looked at things for years. And they also learn the latest and greatest emerging technologies that are out there, and they have some of the best analytical minds that I've seen. So the hope is you'll get involved with universities and work with them. And there's lots of ways you can do that. So I'll mention some of those. I teach a class at SMU called Managing Your Career, which is how to get a job in analytics, where I bring a different company in every week to talk to our students about what they do in analytics and what they do from a business perspective, So we try to bring in a lot of different types of companies so that the students get introduced to companies, can network with those companies. And this is a great opportunity for folks like yourself who might want to get involved in universities, really just to come out and speak to a university about what it is that you do and your company does. We also have recruiting for fantastic top talent, right? And we can work with you on getting you resume books and getting you information about our students. And if you're looking for people, then this is a great way to get involved in universities to look for young, new talent with very strong skill sets. And that's not just with SMU, but really that's just any university. Texas has some of the most amazing universities overall. Of course, I'm a little bit favored towards SMU, but we have some great universities in Texas that are great to get involved in. You can also get involved in the classroom. So if you haven't thought about this before, but if you've got like a little bit of a teacher inside of you, like I do, you might want to come out and teach a class. If you have a skill set or something that you would like to share with the students, a lot of our professors look for people to come out and get involved in the classroom. And that's a great way for you to give back to this community, but also to introduce yourself to the community. So it's a really fun way to get involved. We also do information sessions, so we'll set up very specific sessions if you have a specific technology that you know or something that you think that might be beneficial for the students to learn. And that's a great way for you to give back, a great way for our students to learn. And then we have panels too. So for somebody who doesn't want to necessarily be the only one getting up to speak, right? We often do panels with companies where we'll do several people on a panel talking about one topic. We'll have a moderator. I've done this many times, and then we'll have the individuals on the panel provide their ideas and work off of each other to be able to do that. So it's a great way to kind of meet some other companies as well and network with them, but also give some advice back to our students and to business people, because we have business people who attend these sessions. Now at SMU, specifically for my MSBA program, we do a capstone every year. And this is something Wei-Ping mentioned, but it's a project that we work with on companies. And we love this. This is one of my favorite things to do, because companies will give us data and they will give us an analytic challenge, and we will build analytic systems for the company. It's free for the company to do that at SMU. You get whatever we build. So whatever the students come up with, that's what you can take home with you. So it's a great way for trying out some new areas, or maybe trying some new technologies that you hadn't tried before, or just really getting introduced to some of the students and what their talents are. So if you're interested in any of that, you know, we are right now accepting projects for the spring semester, which is when we do it. We do it for the January to April timeframe. And we love getting new companies involved in this and working with our students. We also do internships in the spring semester. So if you're looking for any people to hire, we'd love to have people hire our students for internships, less than 20 hours a week. They get course credit for it, but they can work with you. And in this case, for my program, we like for it to be analytic in nature, but if you're looking for something different, there's a lot of universities out there that love to do internships in the spring for their students. And then we also do contests. So if you ever thought about doing a contest, we did last year a contest with Toyota, this past year iHeartMedia. We've done work with JCPenney's before, with 7-Eleven before. So they give us a challenge and our students create groups, and then they go and they do contests, compete against each other for these challenges and come up with solutions for these companies. And the companies have prizes associated with it, but it's a great way for us to do that. And you can see a number of, 2 of the top 3 teams last year were my MSBA students, which I was very proud of. And you can see there on the bottom. So a lot of those were our Chinese students, and they are the ones who always get involved in the contest. So I love them for that, because they've been a big part of that world. So just overall together, you know, if you're really looking for ways to build a strong community and to be a part of a strong community, working with universities is a great way to do this. We're very open to anybody who wants to come in and work with us and spend some time with us and with our students. And if you'd like to know more about any of this from an SMU perspective, and especially for the MSBA program, feel free to reach out to me directly. It's htabor@smu.edu. happy to talk to you and would love to send some students your way if you're interested in that, or if you're just interested in going back to school at some point, right? We love to have new students here, and we have great opportunities for anybody who's looking to get some new skills and new technology under their belts. So thank you again for letting me speak today.
Thank you, Hetty. Thank you so much for the great insight into your program. So now we'd like to introduce Digger to introduce our next speaker.
接下来呢，让我们有请大律师 Digger 来介绍今天的第3位主题演讲嘉宾。
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Digger Chen, 中文陈尊璇. I'm a member of the ACP board, and I'm a lawyer, practice law for 15 years. It's my great honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Peter Zeidenberg. Mr. Zeidenberg is a trial lawyer. In his early career, he was an assistant district attorney in Massachusetts, and then assistant U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., and then at Department of Justice. So Mr. Zeidenberg represented U.S. government in doing a number of well-known cases. One of the cases connected to Texas is called U.S. versus Libby. Scooter Libby, who was former advisor to former Vice President Dick Cheney. So Mr. Zeidenberg represented the U.S., indicted and convicted Mr. Libby. And after serving in the government, Mr. Zeidenberg moved to law firm private practice. He represented many Chinese scientists, including Xi Xiaoxing, Chen Xiafen. These cases all got dismissed, dropped by the government. Mr. Zeidenberg graduated a bachelor degree from University of Wisconsin and JD Juris Doctor degree from Boston College Law School. Without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Zeidenberg.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Digger was saying, that I've made my practice the last 5 years almost exclusively representing Chinese American and ethnic Chinese scientists who've been charged by the Department of Justice or investigated by the Department of Justice or being investigated by their universities for allegations of espionage, theft of trade secrets, and similar infractions, and it's become something of an epidemic. And so my talk today, which I'd like to share with you, is has to do with the dangers that you would face currently as a ethnic Chinese practicing the sciences in the United States right now, particularly if you are getting grant money. And most of the scientists and professors do get US federal grants. So let me just show you just a sampling of the cases that have been brought. And these are headlines that you can see from just the last several months that I just took off the internet. Professors from universities all over the United States, large and small, are being targeted. And these individuals are being not just losing their jobs, but they're being prosecuted by the federal government for a variety of offenses. From Harvard to NYU to all the large science and engineering schools such as Purdue, Georgia Tech, Texas A&M. They all have cases. So this is just a sampling. And what this is all a result of is something called the China Initiative, which was announced in November of 2018, so just almost exactly 2 years ago. And this was by then Attorney General who indicated that he wanted to combat the national security threat posed by China. And he was going to focus prosecutorial attention on those engaged in trade secret theft, hacking, and espionage. So this was Jeff Sessions, who was then the Attorney General. And they have the current US government has a singular focus on China and the Chinese, and a perception, which I think there's real question as to whether it's accurate or not, but regardless, they have a strongly held and unshakable belief that China is out to steal American technology, and that they're doing it by using scientists in the United States and students, ethnic Chinese students here in the United States. This is statement from Attorney General Sessions' announcement indicating how China wants to steal America's brain power, and that's how they're going to dominate the world with it. It's a very malign view of China and really makes China the enemy, and unfortunately targets the ethnic Chinese in the United States who are performing research here. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, has made very clear that he is 100% behind this policy and believes that China is out to steal US technology. Now, this is very disturbing. This was a statement by John Demers, who is the head of the section at the US Department of Justice that would be prosecuting these cases. He would supervise this. And he is expecting every single US attorney's office in the country, there's 94, so there's 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 in each state in the United States. And he expects each of these offices to bring a case every year. And frankly, he says that would be great if they could bring more than 1 case per year. And as you might imagine, if you put the emphasis on just the number of cases as opposed to the quality of cases, the US attorneys bring in a lot of terrible cases. And when I say terrible, weak cases that shouldn't be prosecuted, just because there's pressure on them to prosecute cases. Now, what has happened is NIH, which gives out a tremendous amount of grant money every year, has sent out 18,000 letters to research institutions and universities, basically telling those institutions to investigate their professors and their researchers to see if they have undisclosed ties to China. And as a result, those institutions are focusing their investigations on their ethnic Chinese staff. And the way they're doing that is they are going through the emails unannounced, so the professors don't know this is happening. They go through the emails and they're looking for contacts that the professor may have had with Chinese institutions, Chinese businesses, or most importantly, talent programs. So in the grant process, those of you who have applied for federal grants or be familiar with these, this terminology, but there are certain components of that grant application, such as a biosketch, the grant application itself, something called a just-in-time report, and a conflict of interest report and progress reports. So they will look at those and they will see if the professor has listed their Chinese affiliation. They do all of this without ever first contacting the professor or the researcher. And then they take those results of that investigation, they give it to either the Office of Inspector General or the FBI for possible prosecution. Now, ironically, even though the ostensible purpose of the China initiative is to prevent the theft, the intellectual property theft from the United States to China, these cases that I'm talking about, almost none of them involve actual intellectual property theft or theft of trade secrets or anything close to what is supposedly being targeted by this initiative. Instead, what the government is looking at is they're simply looking to see if the researcher or scientist failed to disclose his some Chinese affiliation. That in and of itself becomes the crime. So even though ostensibly the purpose is to prevent intellectual property theft, they're prosecuting people and there's not even an allegation that there was, that there was any intellectual property theft. So what are they looking for? And let me start by saying what they're not looking for. They are not focused on what you would think they would be focused on. They are not focused on the improper transfer of technology or intellectual property. So a lot of professors and researchers feel that if they haven't ever shared anything improperly with anyone in China, then they should be fine, that they have not, crossed any lines and that they're not going to be in any trouble. That is not true, okay? That should be the case. It's a reasonable thought, but unfortunately, that is not the case because the government isn't looking necessarily for shared technology. What they're looking for are undisclosed ties to Chinese entities. So if you have a professorship at a foreign institution in China, for instance, a great number of professors only work 9 months a year and they spend 3 months a year doing what they feel is their time. They're not getting paid. Many go to China and teach, or they give lectures. Many times those professors do not see any need for disclosing that on their conflict of interest form, for instance. And that alone could give rise to a criminal prosecution. In particular, the government is looking for people with ties to talent programs, and specifically the 1,000 Talent Program. The United States government views the China 1,000 Talent Program as really suspect, really sinister, and basically an arm of the Chinese government meant to designed with nefarious purposes to steal U.S. intellectual property, and there's nothing benign about it. So if you have engaged with a talent program, even if you haven't joined a talent program, you will have a big fat target on your back. And in many, many cases, that I've had and that I've seen, there are discussions between a university professor or a researcher with a talent program, and they exchange paperwork, they exchange a contract, but it's never agreed to. Because, for instance, a lot of times there's a discussion about it, and then the professor learns that it's going to require far more time commitment than he is willing to be able to commit to. And so he declines it, but there's no paperwork showing that declination. So when there's an investigation done, all they find is a contract that was mailed to the professor, emailed to the professor. That, in their minds, is an agreement. Shouldn't be, but that's what it is. And so if you've done that, you can expect that you are likely to be scrutinized very closely. So if there's an investigation and a finding that that you didn't disclose, then these are things that are going to happen. Your lab will be closed. Your funding sources will be shut down. You will likely be banned from campus and or the lab. You'll be put on administrative leave, generally unpaid administrative leave. If you are not fired forthwith, which often happens, even tenured professors I've had have been fired without even being interviewed, simply based on a review of internal emails. And then you can be referred to for criminal prosecution. So what are the factors that would put a researcher at particularly high risk? First and foremost, ethnic Chinese, whether you're an American citizen or not, doesn't matter. If you're ethnic Chinese, you will be viewed with suspicion. If you get US funded grants, especially NIH, National Science Foundation, it should be NSF, not NSD, Department of Energy, and NASA. Those are the agencies that are being most aggressive at this time. But any US funded grants would put you at risk. If you also have an adjunct professorship with a Chinese university or participate in the talent program, such as the 1,000 Talent Program, a combination of those factors puts you in a very high risk category. If you are subject to one of these investigations, you should not expect to be treated fairly, unfortunately. Universities routinely suspend or even terminate tenured professors based on just a review of the emails alone without even a confirmatory interview. So if they simply look at emails and think they understand what's being discussed in the emails, that is enough for these investigators to terminate you. So based on unsigned agreements, based on just emails, these reviewers will determine in their minds that a violation has occurred, and people are terminated without even having an opportunity to explain their situation. What are the consequences? They're predictable, as you might imagine. Tremendous harm to your reputation. Financially, it's devastating. And not only do you lose your job, you have to face the expenses of trying to defend against it. Loss of grant funding, loss of employment, and of course, possible criminal prosecution. So how do you protect yourself if you have some of those risk factors, what is it that you should do? The key is transparency. You want to disclose everything and anything that you're doing on a going forward basis. You have to fill out your conflict of interest forms, and you have to be certain that they're accurate. You can't just do these things in a routine way. You have to understand that they are likely to be scrutinized, and basically your liberty could be at stake if there are mistakes made. So take the time, be careful, and if in doubt, include the information. Your bio sketches must reflect any positions in China, even unpaid or honorific. And then maintain good records of all your emails from the university in which you discuss any outside activities, get approval for everything before you do it, and then keep those emails safe in a file that you can show, because that could be a get out of jail free card. If you are seeking federal grants, do not participate in a talent program. You must disclose any of your affiliations in China on your conflict of interest form, your bio sketch, and any other forms associated with your grant. And you have to disclose any pending or existing Chinese grants. That's a big one. If you get Chinese grants, they're going to want to know about it. Now, if you have some of these undisclosed affiliations, unfortunately, the way to handle it is not by volunteering that. I've had a number of clients who have thought that they were being ultra careful by going in and saying, oh, by the way, back in 2017, I did this, that, or the other thing. I thought you should know. It just creates a headache. It creates an investigation. It creates a lot of problems. So if they haven't been asked about your old business, don't raise it. What to do if the university has questions? Find out who's going to be at the meeting. And if they're bringing outside counsel, bring in your own lawyer. I can't tell you, emphasize how important it is for you to have experienced counsel representing you in any of your transactions with the university or with the government. Many times clients go in and they assume that they can handle this. They assume that this is going to be a friendly interview, and they are sorely disappointed. If you are contacted by the FBI or other federal agents, you're under no obligation to answer any questions. You can refuse to answer questions. You can simply say that you have a lawyer and you're, or that you want to get a lawyer, and you're under no obligation to speak. And in almost all instances, the best course of action is to keep your mouth shut and take advantage of your constitutional right and simply politely decline to answer questions. And you should advise your spouse of the same thing, because chances are they will come and talk to your wife or your husband at the same time. So tell your wife, tell your spouse that if they're contacted by federal agents, that they should simply say that they would prefer not to answer questions. And if you are arrested and charged, again, exercise your right to remain silent. You do not have to answer questions. You should not answer questions. Get an attorney, get an experienced attorney. And once you do get that attorney, you have to stay involved in your case. Just like a patient and talking to a doctor needs to be proactive, you need to be proactive and be an advocate for yourself. So make sure that the right questions are being asked, the right answers are being given, and that your attorney seems to know and understand the issues. So that's it. If there are any questions, Digger, I don't know if we're opening this up to questions, but if anyone has any, I'm happy to answer or try to.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. This is a great talk. I have a particular question for Peter. It's a general question I think everybody is interested in. What do you think if the new government, new administration comes in? We're supposed to have a new president, a new administration. Would this China initiative be changed, adjusted, or stay intact?
Well, that's an excellent question. And, the short answer is we don't know for sure. But unfortunately, I am not expecting a dramatic change. Unfortunately, this anti-Chinese sentiment is fairly bipartisan. So, the Republicans are beating their chest about how tough they can be with China. And I frankly think that the Democrats are going to be similarly aggressive. Now, I think that some of the U.S. attorneys involved are going to be hopefully a little more reasonable and less interested in pleasing the bosses in a political sense. But unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be a dramatic shift away from this emphasis on prosecuting intellectual property theft cases. So time will tell, but I'm not expecting a huge sea change.
The first question for Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much for your excellent community services and a great talk.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Liu.
Yeah, I was curious about the movie. You mentioned Barry Morrow, which is the Oscar winner, to be your, the screenplay writer. I was curious.
Yes.
The movie situation right now, and what do you, which stage the movie is on, and I think ACP later on have another session for the details of this, but I want to ask you some questions about that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, for our movie, it has been going on since 2014 until now, and our script play, which written by Mr. Barry Morrow, it's finished about a year ago. And so we are in the pre-production stage, which means we couldn't do anything until the production fund is in place, which we have a partner, from the film company or investor, for the people who really wants to see this movie was shown in the big screen and around the world. So this is what we are now. We do have some directors in mind, and they are very interesting to direct this movie, and they like the script. And we want to have this movie. It's a co-production, China and the U.S., because the history about the transcontinental railroad was happened during the 1865 to finish at the 1869. So, and the Chinese worker come all the way, from China to come over to help the U.S. to build this transcontinental railroad. And so the story happens, the experience, the cooperations from the railroad workers and the management company. And so this is something we really like to see. It's a co-production project. And we hope as soon as we have the production funds in place and we have our partner together, then we can start the production process, which probably will take another 6 months, including another 2 months of post-production. And so this is what our movie current situation. We want to be a blockbuster movie, and because the reasons is not only for the money returns. Of course, the investor is looking for that, but for our team, we want to have more people to watch the movie, and it's not strictly it's a documentary. It has a story there, and which we want all the people, the Chinese people, the others, they know this part of the history. And so that's our goal, to have more people to watch this movie.
Thank you so much for your talk today. I'm curious about your program because it's an excellent program, combine, education and the industry. I was curious because right now the COVID problem right now, the job market is very slowed down, right? So at this difficult time, what is the program is doing right now, and how was the perspective for the students in the job market after your graduation and this pandemic time? And I was curious, asking, maybe I hope it's not like a trade secret. What's the hiring rate of your graduates, and what's the starting salary or average salary for your graduates? I hope it's not
Appreciate that. That's a good question. The pandemic has hit us pretty hard, just especially for our international students, because the biggest issue we've had with our international students is getting them here, right? The visas have all been slowed down or stopped entirely. We have still a ban on certain countries coming into the US, right? And that keeps them from being able to travel over here, even if they can get their visa. So this year, the numbers of international students, which is typically about 60% of our class, is actually about 30% of our class this year. And most of those students were already students in the US getting their undergrad who just stayed here and continued on. So that's hurt a little bit. Some of our students are taking their courses though online. So this year with COVID, what we've done is we've tried to create somewhat of a hybrid solution where our students can do their courses, they can choose to do their courses either online or in person. So if somebody feels uncomfortable about it being in a classroom, they can do the courses online, even if they're here in the US, and if they're overseas, because we have a number of students in China right now and in India who are taking courses online, which is not our normal way. Normal way of teaching for this program is actually in person. We've built videos. We had a team come out over the summer and do videos for a number of the professors like myself, where they video recorded all of our classes as well. So the students do some pre-work before they come into the classroom. And that way we We've done a number of ways to have more classes with fewer numbers of people in them so that we can social distance. So masks are required on campus. The students have to stay 6 feet apart within the classrooms themselves. We've tried to be very safe. We actually do contact tracing within the university for students to make sure that we know where the students are. And if anybody has contracted the virus, that we have a way to be able to let other people know that we're around them so that they can act accordingly. We're also letting all their students out, and you would be interested in this because typically we go till the Thanksgiving break, a little bit of a break there, and then they come back and finish the rest of the year. This year, they're actually leaving right before Thanksgiving, and we're doing our final exams virtually. So the students will leave here the 23rd, I think it is, or the 22nd of November, and they won't come back until almost the 18th of January. So they've got about 2 months that they won't be physically here on campus. That would keep them from going back and forth. As far as job prospects though, so, typically our jobs are quite good for this particular program. We typically have around 98% placement over the years, right, over the last 7 years. Last year was probably our hardest placement, but I will tell you, within 6 months of graduation, we have 100% placement on our domestic students, and we have 73% placement on our international students. And you can imagine why, right? It's a little more difficult for international students to get jobs in the first place. But then when you've got something like this going on, and we've had a number of companies that traditionally hire our students, like American Airlines hires a lot of our international students, but they're not really hiring much this year, right? Obviously, the travel industry has been hurt by this. And when we have American Airlines and Southwest Airlines, big proponents of that, that's harder. What I've had the students do is work towards companies that have benefited, to say that in a bad way, benefited from this pandemic. Companies like Amazon that are still hiring, for even Target and Walmart, and companies like this, where this has been a big part of what they've had to do with. You would think too that a lot of the restaurants, if you talk small restaurants, a lot of those have gone out of business, but big restaurant chains like Brinker, that does Chili's, and Maggiano's, they are still hiring some people. So it really just depends on the industry. So we try to gear our students towards very specific industries. The consulting industry is still doing really well and still hiring young people, right? And they hire a lot of our students. So that's been a good area for us as well. So we just kind of tried to revert a little bit based on what's happening in the world right now. And then for next year, what I'm hoping, we had a lot of students defer this year to next year, right? So they didn't come. As we had 77 international students, mostly international students, who deferred to next year to come out because of all the issues with visas and so forth. So we will have potentially a fairly big class next year if we can get this coronavirus under control and we can get the visas set back up again. And I think I know there's some struggles with, and there were some questions about the current administration or the new administration that's coming in. But we all know that the past administration has not been particularly kind to immigration statuses, right? And I think that the new administration will actually be better about that. So I think that will help our students who really do want to come in and learn. That's what I'm hoping for anyway, because they've been a big part of our program overall. And we love having them here. When you asked about salaries, so in Dallas, our salaries are sitting right around, for our degree, with less than 3 years of work experience, about $73,000. So it's a pretty good salary overall, especially for young people, right, who are just getting into this industry. So it's a really nice salary base for Dallas, especially.
With the development of globalization, there will be more and more opportunities for international cooperation, especially with China. How to avoid communication in sensitive areas without being suspected by the FBI? Changgan asks.
Well, it's hard to answer that without knowing the precise context of the question. But in general, as I mentioned, the key is transparency. So when you have communications with foreign entities, whichever side you're going from China to the US or US to China, you want to include in those emails or those messages, if possible, CC, carbon copy your supervisor, or summarize the conversation afterward and tell your supervisor about it beforehand, after the fact. So there can't be a question later that you're doing something, furtively, behind the scenes, or you're sneaking around about it. And so to the extent that you can do things out in the open and you can make it clear, and that way, if there are objections raised, they can explain it to you beforehand, but they can't claim that they didn't know what you were doing. So again, the emphasis is on full transparency.
This China initiative will have impact on on the second generation of Chinese Americans.
Yes. As I said, the China initiative is basically targeting China for their purported theft of intellectual property, but the US government believes that China is using its citizens here in the US and its ethnic, that people with Chinese heritage, they believe are basically working and being targeted by China. So yeah, I mean, it's deep. Don't take anything of what I'm saying to be an endorsement of this, because I hope it's clear that I think how damaging, harmful, and unfair this is, because, as I said, all my clients are Chinese Americans. Most of them are citizens, US citizens, and they are loyal American citizens, but the US government views them with suspicion, unfortunately, and they view them as Chinese first and American second. So first generation, second generation, unfortunately, it doesn't really matter.
This is quite alarming. For example, if my son goes to MIT, works there, and then develop a new technology, and then have some communications with colleagues internationally, I think they should be aware of this program. There's another question, I think it's about more on legal technical, is that based on the news, it seems all these allegations to those Chinese scholars, scientists were very serious. But why you said most of these allegations are baseless? So what happened?
Well, it's very important when you, in these cases, the Department of Justice, frankly, often overstates the facts dramatically when they make their announcements. So if you read the announcements, it sounds like, oh my God, this is horrible. This is such a huge national security threat. And then as you investigate the case, you find out it's basically all a bunch of BS, and nothing of the sort has happened. For instance, I have a case now in Kansas, and the whole case comes down to, from the government's perspective, what they have now said is that he simply did not fill out a conflict of interest form correctly. Okay. And they charged him with 10 felonies because he didn't fill out a conflict of interest form correctly. No allegation that he shared any technology with China. And yet when they announced the case, it's all done from the Department of Justice, and this is going to show China, and this is, we're not going to stand for this anymore. There was no harm to the United States, no harm whatsoever. So that's what I mean is I think these cases get dramatized by people seeking headlines and attention for themselves because they think it's going to advance their interest at the Department of Justice.
Yeah, along this line, it seems like most common allegation is fraud. can you expand a little bit about like fraud case?
Yes.
I mean,
yes. Yeah. So what the government has done, their theory in these cases is that you get a combination of factors. So you have a researcher, he or she gets federal grant money, through NIH or National Science Foundation, they get grant money. And then they say, well, we didn't know because you didn't put on your conflict of interest form this disclosure. And as a result, we gave you the grant money. So you defrauded us of $1 million in grant money. So that's how they come up with fraud. They charge a wire fraud, which is very serious, 20-year felony. But the thing is, in these fraud cases, there's no allegation that the research hasn't been done. And there's no allegation that the researcher has taken any money improperly. They haven't lined their pockets. They haven't fudged the data. Real research is being done as promised, and yet they're alleging fraud because we didn't know you spent your summers in China. And if we had known, we wouldn't have given you the grant money. So therefore you defrauded us of millions of dollars. So that's how they come up with a fraud allegation based on simply filling out a form incorrectly.
Thank you, Peter. So now we are running a little short on time. We'd like to close the QA session. I'd like to thank you, Peter, for your valuable insight into the legality of things. And also Lisa and Haiti, all the speakers, thank you for your time today, for speaking this afternoon. As a special thanks to all of you, we'd like to give each of you an outstanding contribution award, which since this is in a virtual conference, you should expect to see in the mail in the next coming days.
Okay, thank you very much.
是的，我们也谢谢我们今天3位的主题演讲嘉宾，谢谢你们的花时间在这个时候和我们共同度过。那我们将在以邮件的形式将你们的特殊贡献奖发送给你们，再一次对你们进行感谢。
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, ACP.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
回顾达拉斯美中专业人士协会呢，可能已经走过了30年的发展历程了，已经发展成为达福地区人数最多、影响最大的华人非营利组织，我们倍感骄傲和自豪。当然，我们也会继续秉承服务华社、侨联美中的宗旨，继续为达拉斯地区做出更多的贡献。今年的城市论坛呢，我们以这样特殊的方式，在这样 Zoom 的和网上直播的形式敲响了第一声响。那接下来的时间呢，我们会有1周的时间，有法律维权、地产投资、科教、医疗、教育、保险、税务等多个领域的高水准论坛，也请大家准时上线收看。今天的3点钟呢，将是法律维权的分会场，请大家不要错过，倾听大律师的分享。
Looking back at the history of the Dallas American Chinese Professionals Association, for nearly 30 years, we've developed into the largest and most influential Chinese nonprofit organization in DFW. We're proud to be able to continue to uphold the purpose of serving the Chinese community in both the United States and China. This year's MetroCon can be described as a major event in all walks of life. And the next week, we will have a high-level forum on the legal rights, real estate investments, and science and education, medical care, insurance and taxation, along with other fields.
谢谢大家，再一次感谢线上的所有的观众朋友，请持续关注我们为期1周的线上的论坛。谢谢。那我们今天的开幕式就到此结束了，感谢大家。